Right, so this is going to be a video talking about how 2024 and Year 9 should be Siege's year. There's a good chance we're back, and that's great news for almost everyone involved. Unless you're just a doomer and you're about to lose your income, in which case, find fucking Valorant or some shit, man. Get a life. I'm not doing this with the naive optimism of some of the other people who are talking about Siege being back, however. I'm not, let me be clear. I think we're back. I don't know if we're going to the stratosphere, but that's okay. I don't need Siege to be in the stratosphere. I don't need Siege to be the biggest thing ever, to have fun, and to consider it a success. But regardless, this isn't about my philosophy on fucking dead games or whatever. This is about how Siege is on its way back, and there are three main points that give me that hope as compared to some people who might just say we're back because we're back, right? The first one is the meta, the state of a meta that's more small scale, like which operators are powerful and popular, especially at competitive level, because as much as the competitive casual schism likes to pretend like there's no interaction and there's no trickle down, the competitive meta decides the casual meta. With Year 9, Ubisoft is going out of their way to make a number of nerfs and changes to various defending operators who have been released recently. So you'll know Azami's getting the initial change coming into this new season where her barriers are getting shot at, and after a certain amount of bullets, it gets destroyed. There's the Solus nerf with the reduced range and inability to use the scanner during the prep phase. There's a Fenrir nerf where he gets one less FNAT. They're not bulletproof. All of these things, really, really good. And here's the reason why. The defending operators have been maliciously oppressive for the past year and a half, almost 2 years, starting with Azami. And then you piled on Solus and then Fenrir and Tubarão. On their own, they're like powerful and oppressive, but not like terrible. You can deal with them individually. The problem was that we got them back to back to back to back as far as the defending side was concerned, and on the attacking side we were getting very reasonable balanced operators. So as far as the power creep goes, one of the sides was not moving and the other side was moving a whole lot to being more and more powerful. Ubisoft is taking steps to address this in Year 9, so off rip, that's already sounds great, because people were talking about how when it was just Azami, Solus, and Fenrir, the game was in a pretty good state, like it was kind of sucky, and then Tubarão pushed it over the edge, but on its own, the game was fun, and the meta was one of the most balanced that we'd seen, despite how oppressive and powerful these operators were on an individual level. With Ubisoft taking steps to bring these operators back down to the level of mere mortals like everyone else in the roster, that should put the game into a very, very healthy meta, because if it was already really good before when Azami and Solus and Fenrir were overpowered, well, when they're brought down to earth, and like so's Tubarão eventually, please, I beg you, the meta should be fun again. So that's the first point right there already. Like, that's a big dub. That's a very big dub. The only downside is like it's going to take a while, but hey, I'd rather make sure that it gets done right rather than just having it here and have it be messy, at least as far as this change is concerned. My second point as to why I think that Siege will be back in 2024 is the state of the game. Ubisoft announced a lot of changes in their developer update. First and foremost, obviously the cheating, like they took it on the chin, made their concessions, and moved on with it, which is very, very important. A lot of those changes are, I would say, objectively net positives to the game. You can get finicky with the specifics. Obviously, I don't think the trajectory update is necessary. I think it incentivizes lower levels of play. It's like catering too much to new players who will get used to the grenade trajectory anyways. Like, but the state of the game, all these quality of life changes, all these like general changes, I'd say they're a net positive, and that's my main point here. All of these, for the most part, I'd say we're getting more really, really good changes than like some kind of bad changes. You know, the scales on this one are skewed very heavily towards good changes, and that's very good for the start of Year 9. Additionally, the schedule seems like it's given the development team a lot more time to breathe, which means that we get better quality of life changes and bug fixes and all that stuff, and that's so important. When you're just constantly churning out content, you can't focus on that side of the game because you have to come up with the next shiny new thing that's gonna make your customers pay more money for the video game. And that means that fixing the 5-year-old bug just isn't on the agenda nearly as high up as it should be. Now that you're not making as much content, you've got a little bit more wiggle room to like fix some of those bugs, and that's great. Additionally, I appreciate that Ubisoft took a stance. Siege has been in this weird middle ground for a while now where we're half tac shooter, uber tactical, team based, all about that coordination, and half run and gun. There was no clear vision of what the game was supposed to be, how it's supposed to play, because Ubisoft was frankly trying to make the game for everyone, for casuals, for hardcores, for fast-paced, gun-heavy players, and slow-paced tactical players. And they didn't know who they wanted to cater to. They tried to cater to everyone. And in the words of a Helldiver 2's CEO's Twitter bio, a game made for everyone is a game made for no one. Trying to chase every audience at once meant that Siege was kind of just not fun for anyone. And with the changes made to the scopes and the grips and the movement speed and ADS and all this stuff, Ubisoft is taking a concrete stance on how they want Siege to play heading into this next year. And that is so good, because it really just sets the tone, and it can serve as like a kind of marking point, a guiding light, if you will, for how Ubisoft wants to move forward with the game as far as balancing changes, as far as new operators, as far as any aspect of the game. They can look at updates like this one, which, yeah, if I'm an Ash main with a fucking 2.5 KD, maybe I take offense to this because I don't get to run at people as much and run them over. I get it. That you're losing your fun. But there are other games out there for you if you can't adapt or if you don't want to adapt. And that's what this is about. This is about narrowing the field of what kind of game Siege is, and there will be some casualties, but I think it'll also lead to a much healthier and much more fulfilling game for everyone involved who chooses to stay. The final reason why I think Siege will bounce back in year 9 is quite frankly just the Six Invitational, the 2024 Six Invitational. This was one of the best tournaments we've had in the history of Siege. I should know. I'm watching a lot of them. I'm rewatching a lot of them to make videos. And I'm about to get up to the 2018 Six Invitational. But I was talking with a friend a while back just about why that was such an impactful tournament, because everyone knows how iconic the 2018 Six Invitational is for the history of Siege and the history of the esport. You know, this is where Penta reverse swept EG. But beyond that, that was actually one of the best tournaments in the entire history of the game. And it's been matched by SI 2024. So we had this perfect storm back in 2018, and we've never been able to one-up it. We've never been able to beat this great, great tournament. But we finally have. We had a really, really good crowd. Beyond that, you had an important, like, hype matches and hype upsets that didn't really affect the main tournament narratives. And what do I mean by this? When you get upsets in most esports tournaments, what usually happens is that you sacrifice a different narrative of the tournament, a different team's narrative, for that upset to happen. And that can really lead to some underwhelming matches or some underwhelming storylines headed into the later stages of the tournament. You know, for every upset that gets in, that's a favorite that inherently didn't make it in. This didn't happen in any meaningful way. Yes, W7M looked mortal, got brought down to the loser's bracket by the Wolves. But W7M wasn't out. This actually made their tournament run more impressive because they made a loser's bracket run off of it. The upset didn't ruin the tournament. We still got to see the era cemented. And beyond that, you look at something like the grand finals, what it meant, you know, W7M on the cusp of cementing their era, starting to make the real conversation of like, hey, we have a hammer, we have won every event in the calendar year. We can start competing and starting that conversation about, are we better than Penta G2? Are we able to compete? We're in that same realm, because without the hammer, they didn't have that. And then you look at the grand finals, you look at Handy versus Nade, just a 5-mapper, a gloriously competitive 5-mapper, with the final map being a 6 rounds in a row, 2 overtime, to just an absolute barn burner. How could you not get hyped up watching this? How could you not get passionate watching this? This is one of those matches that you can look at, point at, and bring a friend along who's never watched a day of competitive Siege in your life, and you can make them watch that, and they'll get it. They'll be Danny DeVito. That's what it's about. We haven't had one of those matches since 2018 with the grand finals. And so to get a new one at a Six Invitational with a new era and all these positive changes coming. I just cannot see a world where we don't bounce into 2024 with an absolute fucking storm of positive reviews, changes, game state. I just don't see a world where it doesn't get better from here, which is the best place to be.